Welcome back to Coming Together: Interrelationships of Evolutionary Astrology Teachings. This is Bradley Narragon, and today I'm excited. I've got as a guest Steve Wolfson. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. Um, yeah, we go back. I mean, I can't remember. It might have been 13 years ago. I went to you did a conference with Deva in Portland, and we got to meet in person. And you had already been one of my teachers on the message board, and you said something to me that I'll never forget. I've never forgotten in my life there. And I won't say what it is, but I'll
And
say
I
that
don't and I don't remember.
I'll say that it relates to our theme today, which I had proposed this idea for us to talk about cultivating self-worth, and Steve liked that idea, so we're going to talk about that today a little bit. And like that, when I was thinking back to that, it was interesting because I had this thought, Steve, that, and you know, I think you'll agree with this, that there's this thing where at certain moments in our lives, the mirror of relationship reflects back to us, or like we get hit with some message that kind of wakes us up or reminds us of something we have within us, that we are really valuable, um, and maybe we don't really see ourselves like that. But then, ultimately, only ourselves from within can really, um, I don't know, like step into that, you know, like we can't live off of other people telling us that. We have to realize it for ourselves. But we do get help, that mirror, as a thought.
Well, I think that that's not for a person that has that kind of pattern or issue, which is a whole lot of us. Um, it's not an easy thing to shift because it's really ingrained. And so that's why, I mean, I just see more and more a lot of the difficult things that occur in a life are actually trying to point us to, or point here, of rather than outward looking for approval, acceptance, and so forth, that it has to come here. If you're wired differently than that, it is not an easy shift, which we're probably going to be talking quite a bit about here.
That this is one. Okay, I had a thought today thinking about this, is talking about how different people are wired, and um, I mean, and it seems like the results of lifetimes of patriarchal cultures across the planet have kind of created deep wounds of valuing ourselves. Um, but and and a lot of times it seems like most people, and especially in this culture, really need to heal and cultivate a really positive sense of their own sense of value and worth. And I guess my thought was, um, so if is so if that's not everybody, then you know, um, I guess there's a different lesson for some. Like, and that would that be like people who are more narcissistic, or leaning towards the sadistic side of the spectrum? Um, would you say that they have a self-worth already, or an inflated self-worth,
No,
or
it's, I encountered, I won't go into names, but a relationship author in the last few years who has what he calls, and they're like the opposites, they're like the heads and tails on a coin. there's a sense of inferiority and inadequacy, and there's a sense of what this guy calls grandiose. And the cause is the same thing. It is a sense of not being enough, um, being unworthy, and so forth. And they're just different strategies for dealing with that. One of them is, uh, and I think this relates, in extreme cases, I think this relates to the, like EA teaching about masochism and sadism. When those two polarities are at their extreme, they may act out through. I think what it is that we don't, what it all comes down to for me increasingly is we don't want to feel the junk that's inside us because it makes us feel crappy about ourselves because we have been educated with this ideal of perfection or I'm not enough the way I am. I need to be more. And, the one side of it is this is the case because I'm screwing up. And the grandiose side is this is the case because you're screwing up. Um, it's not me, it's I'm fine. It's everybody else. And then there's the opposite way. So these are like strategies for dealing with the same core issue. And so the gist of it in this guy's thing, there's like a more or less level place. None of this is exact and permanent and all this. Everything's always moving. But those of us that are prone towards the inferiority and inadequacy need to elevate ourselves up slowly, gently, and gradually. And those that tend toward the grandiose, I'm better than, or I'm the only person that matters, are going to have difficult things occur in their life that is trying to knock them down. Because we're talking about relationships. So if a person is the very currently popular term narcissist, narcissists don't know they're narcissists, and they would absolutely refuse to the death to admit that, hey, I'm a narcissist. There's a level of what is called a lack of self-awareness or a lack of the ability to self-study. And more I'm seeing like, when am I most open to wanting to understand and grow and change? Are those at the times when I'm feeling wonderful and everything seems great? Usually not. It's when things get hard and I don't know how to deal with it that I am thrown into a state of wanting or needing to figure out, to learn how to deal with what's going on in my life. And the point of it is I don't know. I literally don't know because I have defined myself in a way who I am that doesn't have that knowledge. And so where do I get it? If you have the inferiority pattern, the first thing that is liable to arise on realizing I don't know is something along the line of, well, I should know, and that just proves how messed up I am. But that's the repeating loop. And it goes around and around and around. And the thing I have found, because I spent a whole lot of my life with fighting with that part of myself, the part of me that felt, oh, I'm a good person, and I have what I call, I have what I call like a rock star part that thinks that it's super whatever, but that's a minority. But I have that piece. So the question is, why would I want that or need that or feel that? and it's kind of like trying to compensate. In other words, it's not been okay to just be the way I am. So we have this ideal of perfection. It does not exist. It's impossible. It is the carrot on the stick in front of the donkey in our lives. We're never satisfied with the present moment, with where we are, because there's always more up there that I haven't gotten to yet, and I'm not really worthy until I get there. But guess what? Every time I make progress moving forward, the stick is still sticking out ahead of where I am. So you never get there.
Mhm.
So you start to realize that, well, this is the nature of life. What it's showing me is the next places that I'm going to be headed. I'm not supposed to be there now. I'm supposed to be right where I am. And if I'm supposed to be where I am, including being messy and feeling screwed up and all this, but it's okay, then I don't need, then maybe messiness is okay. My go-to, metaphor for this is um, I used to have this idea of like old growth forest, not having seen one, like, untouched by man, and everything was going to be beautiful and perfect and wonderful and all this. But when you go there, it's kind of a mess. There's trees that are dying, they're falling on other trees. There's other trees that are trying to sprout up, and big trees are shading out little trees, and little trees are surrounding big trees. Like, this is nature. Well, we're part of nature. In other words, what if our life is supposed to feel messy? I didn't say be messy. I said feel messy, because messy is a judgment. What if it's supposed to be the way it is? And I'm very far from that being what I believe. So that's where all the stuff comes from. And it's like this acceptance of, we're in a process. Life is in a process. Everything is impermanent. It's always changing. The place that a human being and animals too feel least secure is in the midst of change. Because our sense of feeling safe comes from a feeling like, I know what's going on. I'm in a certain way in control, or at least I understand, I think I understand what's happening, so I'm not freaking out about, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. But life is endlessly changing. The definition of evolution, which is what evolutionary astrology is about, is change. Why is it always changing? It's leading us to be, we're all one, we're all one, we're all one. That's absolutely true. And to what, I believe, I'll add that. And to what extent do I actually truly grasp that, not just as a mental concept, but as a way of life? So evolution would be bringing me to more and more of seeing things that way, the reality of it. And it's messy. It's another one of my metaphors is about childbirth, which I witnessed too, and of course didn't have the direct experience. But so I've spoken to a lot of women about their childbirth experience and what it was like for them. And one thing that none of them have ever said is it was fun, but it's profound. And that to me more and more is like the metaphor of our life. We can have fun, But the point of life is not to have fun. Fun is an experience we have. So is grief. So is everything in between the two. And it's like, but we don't see things from that perspective. So to me, everything that's happening, more and more I see everything that's happening in my life is leading me towards, moving me towards that perspective of realizing that the messy things in my life are not my fault and not a sin or stupidity on my part. I'm doing the best I can, I know the best I know how. And out of all this stuff and the trial and error and the messiness and all this, I understand little by little more and more and more. And that's like the whole point. When you start being able to look at it that way, the concepts of inadequate, inferior, and all that, my relationship with those parts of me shifts. They don't go away, but I have a different relationship with them. I honor why they feel that way. They feel inadequate. They don't feel loved, these parts. And I can understand from the traumas and the experiences they've had why they're that way. So I can hold space for them. When they start running my show, in other words, when I'm triggered, when I'm in a fear place, where I'm freaking out or in rage, whatever, and I can stop and notice, like, oh, okay, this is happening again, and it's okay. Just noticing it, I notice, starts changing it. So anyway, in a summary or an intro of that's the basis of where I'm coming from with this, and so I'm going to be referring back, to this basis as we're talking.
Thanks. Thank you, Steve. When I was thinking about this podcast and preparing for it, I had I started thinking about we kind of had this little conversation also about where in the chart do we see these issues come up, um, where in the zodiac, what houses, and I didn't share this with you there, but I was just thinking about it yesterday or the other day, and I guess it's interesting because I was thinking, I was like, well, obviously, like the second house in Taurus correlates to our relationship to ourself overall, and whether or not, how we value ourselves and if we're worthy. And then we've got this whole like Virgo sixth house piece, which is, I don't, like there's something wrong with me, and the whole perfection piece, and the whole sadomasochism spectrum. And then you've got the Capricorn 10th house with the conditioning and the judgment, guilt, shame, repressing and suppressing parts. And I got to this place where I was like, it seems really concentrated in the earth signs in a way of just like this whole dynamic. And I know it shows up in any and all parts of our lives, but I guess one of my thoughts on that was, how much of this has to do with the, um, like, I guess, not living in harmony with Earth and nature itself. It's kind of a weird question. Like and I guess in the sense of this, as we've kind of gone through these periods where we've separated and controlled and destroyed nature as a species more and more, and each other in life. Um, I don't know. I guess I'm just curious to see what kind of reflection or thoughts you'd have on that whole idea of are the earth signs more present in this, and does some of this tie to a loss of relationship with life itself, as in like nature and life around us?
Um, yeah, I see what you're saying with the signs and houses that you pointed out. I feel like every sign in every house has its own version of this because the way it's going to be, in other words, these are what we might call distortions from natural law. Um, but you know, another one of my cute sayings is that if all 8 billion of us all have a certain thing or issue or orientation, it can't be a mistake. And it's like part of the evolutionary process. In a certain way, it's like it's inevitable. And everything that we've gone through has been inevitable. To me, it's the conditioning that we've received that separates us from seeing the totality, which is really what you're talking about in terms of, to me, in terms of a relationship with nature. And, you know, we have wiped out, or uh, if not wiped out, certainly discriminated against the cultures on the planet that still retain some of that sense from the earlier years. Um, and they're, you know, they weren't perfect either, but they were more attuned to certain parts of it than we are. So I just feel like every sign in house is going to have its own way that an inherent sense of unworthiness manifests. It's going to look different in a Leo person than in a Virgo person. But, you know, again, what is the need to feel better than, but a way of compensating for not feeling fully okay?
Yeah,
Not
I,
to not to pick on Leos because
I
there's much around a Leo that's not about a sense of, you know, better than, but that is a common place where that sort of, it's unconscious, it's not on purpose. It's it's part of the strategy. Every one of these things is a strategy that we have developed to try to survive and prosper. And it's like the evolution comes from in realizing, well, that strategy's been good. It's gotten me to here. But all of a sudden, I see where that strategy is starting to hold me back because of the inherent limitations that are in it. In other words, I'm outgrowing my long-standing strategies. And that's not because I'm doing anything wrong. It's actually a sign of success. I have learned what those strategies have been able to give me, to offer me, and they're not enough anymore. And I don't know, you know, and that's another thing I say. It's not like I have a plan B for my life sitting on the shelf and for my identity, who I am and what I'm about, just in case the plan A, you know, the me I think I am blows up sometime. I mean, it's Aries. Mars is an experiential thing. I have to go through the process experientially to find out what am I becoming now. I
Steve,
would
what,
correlate to that because that's the beginning, right? That's the beginning of a cycle. We don't know what it is, it's instinctual.
when we meet the new cycle or the next thing, so there was one thing that you said earlier, and it was like, so we see the next thing coming, and then we see like, oh, we're not there yet. Like, I don't know if you were kind of saying that, but this is kind of what I was getting out of this is like, and what you were just saying is a little bit of some of what you're talking to is really like it's very Virgo in the sense of like we need to be adaptable in life, and also we need to be able to analyze where we're at now and what's going on. Like you're saying, if this doesn't work where I'm at now, now what do I do? It doesn't mean that it's terrible that it doesn't work anymore. So I thought that was interesting because it's these ties into the Virgo archetype, and just was playing with this idea that it's this. Uh, I think, in a sense, maybe that this is how something I'm getting out of what you're saying is it's about our relation, how we meet life and our relationship to life. The next thing comes, and do we see it as, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this, or do we just meet it and say, now how do we work with this? Um, or I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but something about how the relationship of how we meet the next thing coming.
Yes,
Um,
and our relationship would change, is the way I would put it. I mean, I subconsciously, throughout my life, subconsciously, not consciously, um, because of all the change and all the things that occurred to me, it was like, I'm in this by myself. Uh, Life is, I mean, even the definition that we've been given of karma, it's like essentially most of us have been taught karma with a punitive tone to it. It's like if you do good, you get rewarded, and if you do bad, you're going to have 14 screwed up lifetimes just to show, to make up for all this junk you did. But the transition that has been going on inside of me is realizing that every single thing that happens in my life, no matter how much I love it or detest it, has been in my life trying to help me evolve. Now, this is of soul perspective. I've been going around for the last 3 months saying no human in their right mind would ask for some of the kinds of experiences that we get. And so when you're looking at life from the personality ego perspective, which most of us are until we don't, or start seeing more than that, well, it does look like I'm being punished. Of why are, I'm a good person. Why has all this stuff happened to me? I must have been a rotten person in, 4 past lives. This kind of mindset. But it's like, no, um, I put it now like life is trying to get our attention because it's good for us. And if I'm not hearing it, and it's time for me to hear it, because I feel like, I mean, that's astrology. There's timing for things. When I'm supposed to hear something or go through a transit or a change, and maybe I'm not quite hearing it yet, the volume may get turned up. Now, I can interpret that as something that I'm doing wrong or something that's being used against me. But in the words of an old commercial that I have borrowed for this, do you hear me now? Do you hear me now? And it's not like, cut that out. It's not punitive. It's like we're trying to guide you in a direction that we can see from our perspective, and this is life itself talking, is best for you. And it's coming from your own soul. That's where the soul is trying to evolve to. But it's messy and uncomfortable for the personality. And it is. And so it's like needing to honor some of these things I'm not going to like. See, even I just said it, I. Who is the I? Most of us, the I is our ego, our personality. But we are actually souls that have created a personality. But part of that process is we actually more or less are automatically hypnotized when we arrive here and forget all of that. And so our identification is with the human form. I want what's fun and I don't want what's uncomfortable. That's, from the human perspective, that's pretty darn reasonable. There's no argument with it. But that's not really the totality of why we're here. We can enjoy things, we can express. That's part of it. But to me, primarily, I mean, I have Pluto in the eighth house, very end of the eighth house. To me, primarily, we're here to evolve, to grow. And so the things that occur are moving us on the evolutionary path. Now, why? Because a lot of the misgivings and feeling bad about ourselves and all this come from the way we look at ourselves and we define who we are. So it's not necessarily that life is that way. That's the way we're perceiving it. We're sort of projecting our overall outlook, our worldview on what happens to us. And we don't know we're doing this. So what I've found is a significant part of the what I'd call the waking up process is simply starting to notice, oh, this is how I am looking at this particular situation. And it might not really be that way, but that's the way I'm seeing it. And that includes me, the inner critic, the one that's going, you're such an idiot. Um, I'm actually starting very recently getting to the point where even when I start hearing those voices, I can actually smile at it. Like, oh, there he is again. And not fighting with him, but understanding he's trying to help in the best way he knows how. I'm talking about the critic. So if you're
Yeah.
a woman, you probably have a she critic. Um, it's In other words, all of those parts are trying to help, but we see them as fighting. But in other words, if I can't be, I'm all one within myself with all the parts, how can I possibly see all of life as all is one when I'm not even seeing myself as all is one? All these different voices and places inside of me, and they're different ages, they're unresolved trauma parts, and they all have validity for the way they are. So the more that I appreciate this, understand this, the more it's changing my relationship to the whole, to the totality of myself. And as I'm changing my relationship with myself, I see my relationship with everyone else and everything else is also changing. Having more self-compassion, I'm feeling more compassion for people, the type of people that used to really piss me off. To understand there's very painful things that have gone on in their life that have led them to respond in the ways they're responding. That doesn't mean I want or need to be around them, but it means I can hold space for their process. And, they might start seeing it in a week and they might start seeing it in 7 lifetimes. It doesn't matter. It's like my knowing this is the journey I'm on, and I can see other people are on that on all on their own version of that journey, and many people are in utter denial that there is a journey like that for them to be on.
Uh-huh.
And that's all part of the messiness. It's okay. That correlates to the EA uh, categorization of consensus, individuated, and spiritual states of awareness. We're supposed to be the way they are. We're 70, 80%, whatever it is, of the planet that was stated is in consensus. It's supposed to be that way. It's not because they're stupid. That's where they are on the journey of their evolutionary journey of their souls. And so those of us that feel that, well, I think I see at least a little bit more than that, are really here. The greatest contribution I can give to the world, I notice, is me getting real and kind, genuinely kind with myself. And I feel like that's how we, in the long term, break the pattern, the holes of the past, the intergenerational traumas and all that, is by changing our relationship with ourself. That's why I feel like this learning how to feel respecting and compassionate and caring about myself, you about yourself, etc., is possibly the most important thing anybody can do while they're in a human body. So whether you
Steve,
have, yeah,
would you say that if somebody is, um, I don't know, I guess more self-aware, would there be more of a chance to get, um, I don't know, like not stuck, but just kind of like tangled in all of these parts of ourselves? Like, like do you would like you brought up the evolutionary stages and the so um like if your soul's desire is to evolve through the consensus culture you're born into, and then that doesn't include this deeper self journeying and process necessarily, is it easier? Or I don't know if I'm making it, I mean, everybody has challenges and crises and struggles, I get that. But like sometimes, it's like I think of a like as a cat doesn't spend its whole lifetime, like tripping out and feeling terrible about something that happened 5 years ago. Um, but
well,
how much
I don't
how we get lost
totally,
in ourselves.
I actually don't totally agree with that because I'm thinking of like animals, mama animals that lost babies. And that's a grief. I've seen grief in animals, and that's a long-standing grief. So, um, what came to mind for me as an example of what you're talking about is, Jeffrey teaches about second stage spiritual, uh, kind of, they're, they've achieved levels of, some levels of enlightenment, genuine spiritual illumination, but there's still a personality there that's not totally broken, open. And so it goes to the head, and basically they can start thinking that they're kind of hot shit because they understand more than 98% of the people that they see around them. And, he taught it that that's a phase you have to go through. And how long it takes is up to you. It can be relatively on the quick side, whatever that means, or it could take a long time. But I feel like we're just constantly that the evolution is we're constantly broken open and broken down. And the life that we have been living in large ways or small ways simply and oftentimes abruptly just ends. And those are the hardest times as far as I'm concerned, because we do not know what to do. And there's no shortcut. And you try all the remedies, take the herbs, have 4 new relationships in a year, um, uh, go do all this stuff, trying to fill the hole. In fact, this came to me this morning for myself. It was like I and other people, when we're feeling this stuff, it's like we try to fill the hole. We do different things trying to fill the hole. And what came to me was, oh my gosh, what I need to do is not fill the hole, it's feel the hole. There's reasons why I have a hole at any given time. And it is an extremely uncomfortable experience. So and that's why I say no human in their right mind would ask for these things. Anyone in their right mind is going to try to get out of it as quickly as they can. And it's only when you start realizing, whether it takes 10 times or 1,000 times, that you can't get out of it without going through it. You can try to fill the hole, no one can blame you. And you can do this and this and this and this and this. But until I own my hole, what I'm feeling, the uncomfortableness of it, the emptiness of it, the unworthiness of me in it, it's not going to change. It's like embracing the very parts of ourselves that we wish we didn't have, we deny that we have, and we don't know how to deal with. And when somebody exposes it or it comes up, we feel incredibly filled with shame. Like it's all okay. All of that's okay. Because we are divine. So like nothing can happen that's not divine. I mean, we can, you know, um, blame it on evil or something as some sort of other force. But ultimately, everything that happens is divine because divinity is the source of everything. If there is evil, divinity created it. Why? That's, I don't have an answer. But
Gotcha.
my point is, I feel like everything is here serving us, including things that we would never ever look at as serving us. Rape, mutilation, all kinds of awful things. And I'm not saying we should feel gratitude or happy or anything about these things. It is not the fault of the person that's having these experiences that they occurred. They didn't do anything wrong. But somehow all of this serves our evolution because we are infinite. So what happens in one lifetime from the soul's perspective is a very, very, very short period of time, even though by the time we're out of here, we're like, I'm so exhausted. I want to go. But it's just, I don't know, it's just a very different way of looking at things. And, especially with what I just said, because what I just said, I know can trigger people who have had these kind of experiences. And it's hard to say it. And it's not like I feel nobody deserved it. Nobody deserved it. And it's not the quote victim's fault, but it's just stuff that happens. We can't know why. It's utterly traumatizing, but it changes your life. I'm more familiar with it in the realm of death, unexpected and unwanted death, and the effect that it has on one's life. These experiences change us. We can no longer be the person we were. We don't know who else to be or how else to be somebody else. Divorce is a good one. Long-term relationship divorce. We absolutely wind up changing. I've been through some of this stuff. It's like, I don't think that some of the growth that I have experienced could have occurred any other way. And it was hell for a period of time. But in hindsight, looking back at it, like that was awful. And I have deep gratitude for the growth and the changes that have occurred as the result of it. And I think that's the point. And so, in a way, and I hadn't thought of it this way until now, but what if the person who is raped or robbed or violated or whatever, on some level had actually agreed to let that occur, not because it was some kind of punishment on them, but in its own way, somehow it was serving somebody else. Maybe the person that did this needed that experience because at some point they would become so disgusted with themselves that they would stop. We don't know. We don't know. And I'm not excusing in the tiniest way those kind of behaviors that anyone does, but they happen. And I
Yeah.
know from my personal experience, let's put it this way, the potential for deep growth and change is there. They are traumatizing to the moon, and you have to be, in order to really get that growth, you have to learn how to work with the trauma. Otherwise, it just stays unresolved. But that's what I find as I am looking at things this way more and more and more, that everything happens for a purpose that is for my evolution. Um, it's changing my attitude and the way I view a whole lot of things. I mean, what just flashed in my mind is, you know, um, why was Jesus crucified? Um, you know, I don't know that. I don't know the answer, but you have a person there that, today we revere as so ahead of his time and bringing truth and love and light and God, and that's what he had to go through. Okay, so you wanted to talk about Virgo, so we can say, okay, well, that's serious Virgo. And in some ways it is, but he was up there and he said, as they translated it at least, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? Which to me means there's a human being there too. The human being was not happy about what was happening. But the soul understood that was part of the deal, right?
Yeah. That's such an interesting thing to say because, I mean, there's the humanity of it, and at the same time, it seems as though this is just my sense is that he also knew that it wasn't true, but it felt like it, perhaps, in that
Yeah.
moment.
That we have these human parts. That's the thing. I mean, more and more I see we actually are here now, humans, I feel, learning to be more or less a hybrid species. In other words, we're not trying to ascend out of here, which is a popular concept. We're actually, if anything, trying to descend into here, where we learn how to simultaneously be the human being and also retain and operate from soul awareness at the same time. I think it's phenomenally creative and phenomenally difficult. But it's like that's what we're learning. And to me, it seems like or it's my wondering, is that the evolutionary path for the human race that we're in? Is learning how to operate with both of those realities simultaneously. Now, it's the people that are, in the individuated spiritual states and all this that are more likely to be among the first in this transition. I feel like, I just found this wonderful Carl Jung quote recently, and just the part of it. He said, basically, Carl Jung, essentially, there is no evolution without pain. It's built in. Pain is not the point. Pain is part of the process. Just like a mom giving birth, there's pain. We don't like pain. I don't like pain. I don't blame anybody for wanting to avoid pain. The only reason to embrace pain is when you realize after 5,000 attempts at anything other than feeling it and embracing it, that nothing else really works, and that does work. You don't like it. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good. But the more I accept that that's part of it, the more okay I'm becoming with that part of the process. Then I'm not in total fear and trying to push away from it. There's pain. There's joy. You know, it's all part of the totality of this human experience. So like it's like we're here to embrace it all. This all started coming to me because I have a sixth house Mars Moon conjunction. It's Virgo house, sixth house, which is not a high point of feeling wonderful about oneself where one is. But see, even with that, I came to realize that ideal of perfection is kind of like the carrot on the stick in front of the donkey. It's a motivator. It's like, well, there's more. I can do more. I can be better. And that's good, but the the part that's overdone is where I'm beating myself up about the fact that I haven't grabbed the carrot yet. Because the carrot's a moving target. I'm never going to grab it. That's what keeps me motivated to keep moving forward. It's an infinite universe. There's no end to it. I'm never going to, quote, be there. There's not an end point. That's what they say. What is it? It's the journey, not the destination. The destination is like the carrot. We have a destination in mind, and that's where I think I want to go. But the journey comes along. So how often does the journey match up with my mental picture of what I would like it to be?
Well, and I mean, in this culture, there's so many things that condition what getting to the carrot means. And so it even seems harder because, it's just like, do you have this in life yet? Have you got, did you get the degree? Do you have a successful career? Do you have a positive, significant relationship? Do you have a stable home? Like all these things that people equate with parts of the carrot. But that's all an illusion because like it might not even be what somebody signed up for, you know?
Well, there you have the definition to me of moving into the individuated and spiritual states. And for the most part, true or false, people get off that treadmill you just described when their life kind of blows up.
Yeah.
When you realize that you did everything you were supposed to do and told to do, and in the long run, it didn't make you happy. But you do it and do it and do it. And the reason they do it and do it and do it to a large extent is because they've been taught by people who they love and who care about them that that's what a good person does. So it takes a lot of courage to reach the point of this doesn't work for me, I'm not going to do it. And it's going to scare or or create anger in some people that care deeply about that person, that they're throwing their life away or making the wrong choice. But it's not a wrong choice. It's a choice that that particular person wouldn't make, the one that's holding that opinion. It's not for them. So it's like authenticity is the path. That's, to me, the next phases of evolution. I'm going to be who I am, how I am, whether it's popular or whether it's not popular. When you have Libra, like I do and you do, that is scary at times. But again, you realize the only time I really, or the, not, I won't say the only time, the times I feel the best about myself is when I'm authentically doing what I feel is right for me. And I might learn out of that, that some of what I thought was best and right for me wasn't completely right on. But I had to go through these other phases and stages in order to reach that point. I can't just do it because some authority or parent is saying this is what you need to do. You know, that's a problem with religions today to quite an extent. We have to follow our authentic path. And there are a whole lot of places in our culture where that is not okay.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Coming Together. This was Bradley Narragon with special guest Steve Wolfson. If you want to find Steve and connect with him and hire him for a personal reading, check out his website at stevewolfson.com. That's Steve, Steve, Wolfson, WOLFSON.com. This is the end of part one, and in a little bit, we will be posting part two of this conversation. We look forward to you joining us for that. Thank you and be well.